So we've been not like formally doing this because we haven't been preparing, but kind of getting into in the first couple minutes just for conversation, either like a hot topic or a hot take or something. But I'll give you one talking point from my end. I just released a video on Bun, the JavaScript runtime, and I am super excited about it. The like speed looks impressive. The automatic TypeScript integration is impressive. Being able to work with ESM and CommonJS modules all in one. Live reloading servers built in. Like it was a very pleasant experience, and I could do everything that I like would have done in regular Node in terms of working with Express and the file system, that sort of stuff. Anyway, have either of you like looked into it or used Bun yet?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good first hot topic point. Oh, we live? We're good. We're live.
We are.
We're
Yeah,
about this, dude.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Bun. Install speeds were 7 times faster for our app at work.
Wait, so you're actually using Bun at work?
This was just like a proof of concept I did during a team get together. The performance of the app itself didn't change, but like the stuff around it got faster, installing and things like that. But I've got like a hot take, I think, on like if it's gonna replace Node.js or not.
Go for it.
And I think my answer is no. Anything that slurps up.
Oh yeah. Go.
Anything that slurps up so many tools into one, I think is going to have a hard time like breaking out of that. You know, because it does like, doesn't it do like the linting, the formatting, the type conversion and all that stuff? It's going to have a hard time appealing to everybody because they have to change over their entire system instead of just the runtime. You know what I mean? And a new runtime is really hard to adopt because it has to go. Every host now has to support this. Now we got to make Docker images for it. All the Docker registries got to bump stuff. So I feel like it's one of those tools that's going to push the needle in the right direction for what the tooling should be, but it might not be the answer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, it might be a bit like with Yarn versus NPM. At first, Yarn was faster, was better, but Node, I mean the NPM, just corrected things. Yeah, and right now using Yarn is, I mean, we can, but why? And it's also very interesting from the perspective of backward compatibility and everything. I read a lot of articles about why Node can't do some things as quickly as Bun. And backward compatibility is one of the things because Node has to, I mean, on Node's back, there are so many millions applications, libraries, and everything, and it just has to work. And they are in a really difficult position because whatever happens, every mistake they will make, it will hit so many people. And with Bun, they don't have this problem. They are new, they are growing. So they can say, okay, with Bun, you just can't do something. And that's okay.
No.
But I also think that the story will repeat itself in some way with the Yarn versus NPM. So Node will integrate some things. Some things will change, but on the other hand, for sure, Bun will be quicker because of the lack of this backward compatibility and so on. So, but who knows? Maybe it will inspire someone else, and there will be something new that will.
It's usually the case. Yeah, the inspiration piece I think is huge.
It's always about the inspiration in the open source.
Yeah,
someone creates something and it starts.
And we did an episode a while back where we talked about all the new features that have come to Node, and it's like Node is advancing. You know, it's got its own test runner, it's got its own NodeMon. Now it handles env files.
Built-in test runner now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
Yeah, wouldn't use it necessarily, but it's gaining a lot of features.
Yeah,
you know,
I think one of my biggest problems is not having an easy configuration to start with to work with TypeScript specifically, and then ES modules. Like that's been the biggest thing of trying to configure that, because every time I go in and try to configure one of those things for module resolution, I do one thing that I don't understand. It says another thing. I do that thing. I don't understand that thing. And then eventually I maybe get it to work. And then I'm just like, I don't ever want to touch this because I don't know what I'm actually doing. To have, it's similar to Astro. We can get into Astro obviously in a little bit. Like Astro just does things for you that I don't think I should have to do. And I feel like Bun has found a good mix of that.
But again, I think that this might be the thing that will change. I mean, it took Node quite a few versions to integrate env variables, env files inside of it, right? So
which
maybe
is just now, right? Like,
yeah, it's just now. So yeah, maybe let's wait, I don't know, 6-7 versions, and maybe they will also
have a lot of that stuff. Yeah. It seems like it should be like just enabling people to start quicker. I feel like is very important, especially with the rise of TypeScript. Like that should be something that you just have the ability to have configured for you. I don't know.
And also with a huge focus on the developer experience. I mean,
yeah,
I remember when I started coding, most of your things, you just had to do on your own, and it was normal. And right now, when I see, and especially that I come from the PHP environment, so I remember this old PHP, how it looked like, and now I see how Laravel looks like. I see how many amazing tools from JavaScript world look like, and I'm like, why did we spend so much time configuring stuff back then? I really don't understand. And and especially there were really so many things that you just done, but you didn't quite know why.
Yeah, I feel like that's me most of the time. All right, we can officially kick off if y'all are ready. Cool. Let me get the audio ready. Where is this? There we go. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web development and design with a little bit of zest. In this episode, we're going to talk about going headless WordPress with one of my favorite frameworks, Astro.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compressed.
What's up, everyone? My name is James Q. Quick, and I am a developer, speaker, and teacher.
Hey, y'all. I'm bradgarropy, and I'm a front-end developer at Atlassian, working on Confluence.
Nice. And we have yet another amazing guest in Maciek, who is a developer advocate analyst at Kinsta, and kind of sent some buzzwords along of things to talk about, which included WordPress, Headless WordPress, Astro, and we've kind of chatted online. I think probably more in the Astro realm, but you have a lot of background in WordPress, so we'll try to combine all of those, and it should be a lot of fun. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so right now I work as a developer, but still at heart I'm a developer. I come from Poland, from the beautiful city of Łódź, which doesn't have any access to sea or anything. And yes, I'm here. I will be talking with you, and you are experts when it comes to JS and front-end stuff. And I come from the PHP background, so I started with using all those Apache servers and all those things, and it's quite hell of an adventure to see how everything is changing. So.
Yeah, that's a great starting topic. I would love to hear like your take on the landscape of, web development with PHP versus the current state of JavaScript. Because, from what I hear, PHP developers are saying, man, we have it pretty good with Laravel specifically and how easy it is and nice it is. I want to hear your take on, you've worked in both sections. What do you think?
I would say that PHP always had quite a few opportunities, even for the front-end developers. I mean, there were always many templating languages like Twig. It was always as a part of Symfony. There's Blade, which is part of Laravel. And from this perspective, for me, it was always quite difficult to understand what's the fuss about all those JavaScript frameworks. I mean, we have something similar-ish. I mean, it works. It shows the data, right? It works. So we also have things kind of similar to components. We kind of have almost everything. And for me, it was the other way around. It really took me a while understanding, what's the fuss about the front-end frameworks? I don't get it. But yeah, with the more complicated applications and when you start having problems with state management and things like this, and your JavaScript starts to grow and you have to kind of separate it into smaller parts, you probably will need some specialized tools for it. And this is the moment when you start to feel that, okay, that maybe PHP as a language which is great to create many things, it doesn't mean it's also so great to also create front ends with it. I mean, not entirely. Maybe let's connect them. Let's use PHP for the APIs, and maybe let's connect it with something from the modern JavaScript stack. But still, Laravel developers also have their tools like Livewire, so it's the easier way to connect both PHP and JS. There is also now we also have HTMX that is really gaining popularity.
I still don't understand. I don't know what it is.
You don't know? I mean, HTMX, I mean, for me, it's really amazing because I feel that the kind of old school way of creating, especially those simple JavaScript responses and everything, because it just sends you back HTML
from the server.
AP. Yeah, exactly. Like old school way. It's really great. I mean, for some usage, it's perfect. It works. It's quick. You don't have to learn the whole framework. And it works.
Yeah, it's funny. JavaScript is done like a big circle, I feel like. And it's actually kind of a revolving door that also, I like the way that Tom Preston Warner from Redwood talks about it, where it's like kind of circling back where you think it's doing the same stuff it used to, but it's also getting better at what it does. And so there is a take now of like JavaScript is becoming PHP because it's embracing more of the server side stuff that it like didn't do for a long time. Cool. Which is exciting because I think that's an acknowledgement of like respect for things like PHP and Ruby on Rails and stuff have done really well. And I've like friends of mine who are in both the PHP ecosystem and JavaScript ecosystem love PHP, like are very, very excited and feel like that's the most productive that they are is when they're using PHP, Laravel, etc. So I'm not surprised that it is still very popular, very much an option. And I think that's just where people learn more and more and get to pick and choose what's going to be the right thing for them and the specific thing that they're building.
Yeah. Also, I'm really surprised that you use the phrase that PHP is great. I mean, I'm hearing every year that PHP is dying. This is the last year of PHP. No one is using PHP, and every year we are still pushing forward. There are still so many new things, and I mean, it's great. Those are just another tools in our tool set we can choose from, and that's great.
Yeah, and PHP is one of those kind of like foundations of the web, just like the other thing we want to talk about today, WordPress. Like PHP and WordPress, man, like that makes up so much of the content on the internet today. Can you like tell us a little bit about your background in WordPress and how you think WordPress has changed over the years?
Yes. So my background, I mean, my adventure with WordPress started because a long time ago when I was young, when I learned about PHP, like every developer, you have this phase when you want to create your own CMS, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone done it. In most cases, it's horrible in the end. And there is this moment when you learn that, on your own, it will be difficult to integrate everything that is happening around you. All those integrations of the new social networks. And it would be great to integrate them in some way into your CMS, but you don't have time, you are alone. And this was the moment when I learned that there is something called open source. And that there are people who are just sharing their code for free because they think it's great and it's a great opportunity to learn. And I mean, to be honest, my mind has blown. But I did love the open source way from the beginning. It's quite romantic I would say. But yeah, I started looking for the perfect CMS, and at some point, I found there is something called WordPress. It was quite simple. It had really good documentation. And this is kind of funny. I remember that one thing that I loved back then about WordPress so much, that by default it doesn't have any templating language. It just uses PHP. Right now, in every of my WordPress installation, I'm adding some templating layer because it's unusable without it. But back then I thought that, yeah, pure PHP is the best templating language. So yeah, and so I started using it. Then I learned that there is a community. There are WordCamps all over the world, even in Poland.
Massive community.
Massive community, because let's remember, WordPress right now, let's say it has about 50% of the CMS market. So,
and what do you know right offhand? Sorry, so that's like CMS percentage. Do you know it powers like 30% of the web or something ridiculous like that?
30 or 40 even. Okay. It depends on which statistics are we using. The most popular are from W3 Tech. So they measure, I think, the top 1 million websites, and they check what technologies they are using. So yeah, it's massive. So every time when we are thinking, what CMS types are there? The first distinction is there is WordPress and there is the rest. I mean, there is no other CMS that has even 10% of the market, if I remember. So
that's surprising. So there's been like an influx of headless CMS options in the last few years. What were some of the big CMS options competing with WordPress, even though not very well?
Yeah, because WordPress is also good as a headless solution. I mean, it can be. I mean, TechCrunch is using it, for example. TechCrunch is headless. It's headless WordPress. But yeah, I mean, there are many solutions. First of all, we can look at the open source. For example, let's say Strapi, or we have also Directus. From the more service approach, we have Storyblock. Or Butter. So yeah, there are really a lot of them. I think that the fact that there is so much of them, it even makes it so hard for them, because they are competing with each other. And let's be honest, I think that the majority of people who are using WordPress, they don't care, is it headless, is it monolith? Probably they don't even know how it differs. It works. They just install it. Or maybe they just bought a hosting account with WordPress pre-installed, clicked to get some theme, installed some plugins, and they can create their content. It works. So yeah, it's really difficult to beat this.
Yeah, I think we talked before we started recording about Bun versus Node.js. Take this a little bit different direction, and we were talking about whether or not Bun like potentially replaces or takes a big piece of the Node market or whatever. And the big thing for me is like certain things that I don't want to have to configure just work with Bun. And with WordPress, it's been around for so long. There's so many, not only developers that are comfortable with it, there's also the other side of the people that you build the sites for and hand off to, who work at either an agency or like that company, and they can go in and make changes, and they've been using that stuff for years. It's really hard to get past the like, WordPress has been around for a long time. It's incredibly popular. People know it, and it still just works. But the cool thing is it's also evolved. And this is where we've gotten into like the headless space of people realize when they're really excited about their JavaScript frameworks, you could potentially use WordPress as a headless CMS and then bring in data to whatever framework you want to use or whatever it is, and be able to have the two work together and kind of get ideally the best out of, well, maybe not the best, because I think PHP and WordPress developer experience is still really good. I just don't know it because I've never done it. But like for JavaScript developers, have a way to make this connection. So what was your first gateway into headless WordPress when it came out? Was it something that you were excited about? Was it something that you like understood the need and use case for at the time?
Not at all. Not at all. I remember that the first time when we started talking about this was during WordCamp Europe in Vienna. It was really many years ago. And I remember there was this long presentation when the REST API was introduced into core of WordPress. And yeah, one of them lead developers of this part was talking about the future that it can enable and so on, that we will be able to connect WordPress with everything. And after those 2 hours, it was, yeah, that's amazing, but why? Why should I? I mean, it works. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems of WordPress. It works. So every time when you even have a great idea for a really groundbreaking change, you go back, but it works. Why to change it? And it really took a long while until Gatsby happened, because Gatsby kind of started the whole headless revolution. I also remember that Gatsby invested quite a lot of money. They hired Jason Ball, who created the GraphQL plugin for WordPress. So yeah, this was the moment when everything started. And of course, then with more of those JavaScript framework happening, more people started discussing about headless. Very often it was quite a weird discussion because, go headless because it will be faster. But it's not faster because it's headless. In most cases, it's faster because you converted your website into a static site. Of course, it will be faster. It's HTML, so how can it be? So yeah, there was a lot of those discussions, but still, for a really long time, I did not understood why. I don't know, guys. Do you watch Rick and Morty? There was this one when I even using it during one of my presentation about Headless WordPress. Because when you start to talk what is Headless WordPress, you say that, you separate the backend from the front end and you have to connect with the API. But in the end, it's just like monolith, but with an extra step. This was one of the scenes in Rick and Morty. And I was like, it really took me a while to understand that for most cases in WordPress, no, headless, it's not a good idea. It just won't work because it just adds a lot of complication to something that is simple. You have to really understand the need why you would like to go headless, that you want to integrate, for example, something more than just your blog or something. It really depends on so many things, but it's not something like, go headless, your world will become better. Very often not. I mean, you already have a working way of showing your data, so why change it?
Yeah, I feel like one of the arguments for splitting kind of that back end and front end and giving an API is, as companies got bigger, as agencies got larger, and there's more developers working on this stuff, I think they just needed to have a way of being like, okay, cool, now you can have a back end team and a front end team. And now today, like, think about when you make a SaaS app or when you try to sell something, you have a blog for SEO purposes, and you have your online store or the product or app that you're trying to sell, and you kind of need both to drive traffic to the website. So it's like, okay, fine, here's the CMS for that bit. We've got a team for that. And then we've got like another team that builds the front end of the blog or the actual SaaS app. And so I think that was a smart play there, because as web development and the number of developers were growing and the need for an online presence was growing, they kind of like commoditized the CMS, where it's like, cool, now anybody can have it anywhere. We just expose it to everybody.
Yeah.
There's also like the benefit of being able to bring in people with different backgrounds, because I don't have background in WordPress, right? But I could consume WordPress. Like, as a developer, I could use it for content and consume it, and then use whatever framework or a skill set I'm interested in. It was really interesting, though, that you mentioned Gatsby kind of having a big part in that, because I remember Gatsby being, and I was kind of caught up in the hype too, the one that helped revolutionize this idea of static site generators in the JavaScript ecosystem. and it becoming so popular. And one of the things that was super, super important with it was its plugin ecosystem. And I remember the WordPress GraphQL plugin, I never thought about the impact, almost in reverse, that the growth of Gatsby could have had on people realizing the potential of headless WordPress. But it's also interesting that you mentioned the idea of like, it's not because it's headless that it's faster, it's because you're doing a static site. And there's also in WordPress, you can use caching, right? Like sometimes you could get similar benefits. And this is something that I didn't really know about because I didn't early on understand caching at that level and know anything about WordPress to know about caching. But you could get similar benefits from WordPress itself just from caching.
Exactly, and without having to rebuild your website every time because it's semi-dynamic. And this is really funny because of the way from which background we come. I mean, for me, caching was one of the most important things since the beginning. Because if you think about server-side rendering, the first thing, but okay, why we are repeating the same thing every time? Let's save it for a moment, even for 5 minutes. It will change everything. And I never thought that someone could not know about this, but then I realized when on the other hand, I was like, who would need a JavaScript framework, right? But I understand that from your perspective, it's totally the opposite. But I would say that you also mentioned before the fact about the people working with WordPress, not the developers, and this is also a very important part when it comes to headless, to going headless with WordPress, because we already have a team that is familiarized with WordPress. They're using it for years. They don't want to change it. But on the other hand, we have the developers who want to play with new toys, or they just don't like PHP or whatever. They prefer a bit better developer experience. Because when it comes to user experience, WordPress is really good. When it comes to the developer experience, WordPress has some problems on the way. Without going deeper. And going headless is one of the best ways to kind of connect best of two worlds. Users will still have their favorite CMS that they know for many years, and the developers will be playing with the new shiny, let's say, Astro, because it's cool, it works. They are adding so many new features with every release, so why not?
Yeah. Really quickly, just realized we maybe didn't do a good enough job of clarifying the idea of headless. So with WordPress, you have two different components to WordPress. You have WordPress as a CMS, so you can manage your content, create and manage content. Then you also have in WordPress the ability to build a website. So you can have themes, you can customize it with PHP and CSS and JavaScript if you want to. So those are two aspects of like the thing that you actually use to build the website and the thing that you use to manage content. And WordPress originally, people would call a monolith because it did both of those things together. Now, when we talk about headless, we're talking about something that is specifically meant for managing your content. It actually has a UI because that's where you create and manage the content in its UI. But then the website that you build is completely independent of the content management system, other than the fact that you get data from there. So what we'll talk about in a second, I think, is like using Astro as a framework to build an application, but it consumes content from any headless CMS, in this case, a WordPress headless CMS.
Yeah, I must say that for me, Astro, it was because I never understood the whole phenomenon of Gatsby. Then it was Next.js, and I also still didn't understood it. But Astro
really quickly on that, like what were some of the hesitations, or what was it lack of understanding? Was it lack of seeing the use case? Like, what was your hesitation there with Gatsby and Next.js?
The syntax, to be honest, the syntax. As a PHP developer, when I saw JSX for the first time, I was like, but why? Why are you doing this to me? I never, ever got with JSX. I still don't like it too much. It's weird for me.
I'm also really curious. I don't actually know the answer to this, although I know a tiny bit enough about PHP. What's the difference between PHP and JSX? Because you have like templating stuff in PHP too, right? Like to inject variables and stuff. What's the noticeable difference for you?
I mean, when it comes to templating, I always use my favorite was always Twig, so the templating engine from Symfony.
Okay.
For me, it's really hard to describe. It was more of a feeling that you get with Twig. It was just simple, and with JSX, something just didn't. There was something that I just didn't like. I never understood it. That was the reason when just syntax-wise, I always preferred how Vue.js looks. It has, and I heard that also for some reason Laravel also really like
In the Vue community, yeah, they've been tied together.
Exactly, and very often there is this saying that. Vue is kind of like a PHP written in JS, and there is this some similarity there. But then Astro happened, and when I saw the first one of the first releases, the syntax, how simple it was, because this was also my problem with Gatsby and with Next.js. I did not understood some things, especially when you come from the server-side rendering world. You just write something, it renders, that's it. And here you had to think about building stuff. Why? It was weird. And like I said, Astro happened, and it was so much simpler. And thanks to Astro, I was able to go back and start to understand Next.js. Maybe not Gatsby, but it turned out it was a good bet not to spend more time on Gatsby. Yeah. Sadly.
It's funny, that's the second time that you've kind of given me a perspective I haven't thought about, where the impact of a framework really pushing evolution of how we do stuff. Gatsby being the first one to really help you in particular, but I imagine a lot of people kind of get into and understand the idea of and benefits of a headless CMS. And then for you, Astro being the thing that just made the whole idea of Gatsby and Next.js make more sense. Like that's pretty cool, especially like if I were the creator of a framework like that and someone had like an epiphany about other things than just using my product, but like understanding concepts. I feel like that's pretty cool.
This goes back to like the conversation on Twitter over the course of the past couple of days, where people were like, I learned React before JavaScript. You know, it's like learning Gatsby probably taught you about the impact and use of headless CMSs, or, you know, remote data sources that you pull into a static site, right? Like it gets you a lot of the way there. I think Gatsby's tripping point though was just like putting an entire data layer API there. While it was powerful, it was very hard to get accustomed to. And it wasn't a REST data layer; it was a GraphQL data layer. So
yes, and I won't lie, GraphQL. I mean, I am a person who used pure SQL, so no APIs for. I even remember that once I was playing with something, and then I did this. So instead of using an API, I just connected kind of directly to a database, to a MySQL database. So there is, I remember that I shared it on Twitter, and it was one of my best tweets ever. So there was this select something from the name of the database and everything. And there were so many comments. Hey, it looks like PHP with Blade or with Twig. No, it's Astro. It's modern JS. Yeah. It just looks like PHP.
Yeah, when I saw Vercel's SQL function, and it's like a tag template literal, and it's like, what? Put your SQL there, it's going to run on the server. I was like, holy cow, that's wild.
Is that just with React Server components specifically?
I think so. Yeah, and it hooks up to their KV storage or whatever it is. Yeah.
That the server components, the whole idea of server it's just gotten more and more interesting with JavaScript, because we got away from it with statically generated content, and now we just are doing so much more. One of the cool things about Astro, I think, is you don't even have the concept of static. Like if you read up on Astro and you're paying attention, you know it. But Astro is static by default. But you just to get started, you don't really know or care. To your point, like syntactically, you can write a little JavaScript here, you can have some markup. You've got a page. You don't you don't have to make intentional decisions like you might with Next.js of, I guess things are different now because of React server components, but like get static props, get server-side props, etc. You don't really have to think about that just to start. You just can have stuff, it works, it gives you a page, and then one of the things I would like to dive into, not necessarily right now, but in a minute, is like just how capable Astro is on the server as well. Anyway, so with Astro, you kind of mentioned like it kind of helped make some things click. You were interested, excited about the syntax. Did you start to build anything yourself? Did you like migrate over like your blog? Did you build something that integrated with Headless WordPress? Like what was kind of the hands-on piece of that for you?
I mean, this kind of one of the problems was that this started to be a moment when I switched more to a dev role. So it's more about just experimenting with things rather than
diving deep into them.
So, yeah. Yep. And on the other hand, I did migrate my blog, but I did migrate it from WordPress to StateMake, which is a Laravel CMS, because I wanted to try it, and it's really so amazing that I stopped there, and I don't see any reason how to migrate it to something else. But yeah, I kind of built one theme for Astro, and now I'm using it as a great playground to try it out with different headless CMSs, also with WordPress. Now I'm also trying it out with Directus, and I have Storybook on my list as next. And it also kind of showed me one thing. That this was something that I didn't see at first. Astro is really amazing when it comes to its learning curve. Really, you just start writing in it, and when you hit this small bump, yeah, you have to just check this one little thing, and it enables you to go further and further and further. And with me changing those headless CMSs there, it's so simple. Still, the core is left as it was. There are just some minor things. Yeah, like I said, I'm constantly in love in Astro. I'm really happy that that Fred and the rest of the team created it, because for me, and not only for me, it kind of changed the world.
What do you think? I believe Vercel hired Fred to work on it full time. Do I remember that right?
I'm not sure. That I didn't know. Remember. I wasn't going to say you're wrong.
Or was
they
that
definitely have they have this Rich kit. Rich Harris. Yeah, they have Rich Harrison's felt kit.
Okay, maybe I got confused there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what do you think about, let's say, like companies slurping up framework authors the way they're doing? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, let's use our favorite technical term. It depends. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bigger problem of open source. First thing first, the authors have to eat something. They have to have money. So yeah, that's in most cases the reason why they are interested in such partnerships, because they don't only give them their money, but they also give them stability. And this is great. This is amazing, because it lets them work. Because let's be honest, open source isn't, let's call it fully, it isn't a fully capitalistic model, right? Because there is, like I said before, there is a bit of this romantic part when sometimes, thanks to having those sponsors, you can do things that aren't as business-wise necessary, but they improve something. And of course, this also depends on the sponsor of what they expect for their sponsorship. But yeah, from user perspective, yeah, it's good they are sponsoring authors. It's good those authors have the stability to create something amazing. The only problem starts when the company kind of starts to use their position as sponsor to have some either exclusive things.
Yeah.
And this is the moment when things can become a bit unpleasant. on many fronts. And but yeah, there are many models of sponsoring open source, and still we did not invent the perfect one. I also see how it works on the WordPress side. For example, there mostly we have the Automatic company that sponsors the most of the developers. But on the other hand, there is a downside. They have much bigger impact than any other company. So if Automatic wants to integrate something, they just have a force to do so. And if someone else would like to integrate something, it's not that easy. Of course, I'm not saying that Automatic is in general doing something wrong, because, like I said, they are sponsoring most of the active developers that are working on WordPress core. So, but yeah, still, let's be honest. The open source model has its flaws, and many of them are connected with the finances. So,
Yeah.
I really hope that sometimes we will invent a kind of better model here. And I think it would be really better if more companies would pay more for every project they use.
That's the big if. It's just one of those logistical things that, like you said, people have to make money. And I think as developers, we're so used to being really cheap, including myself. Like, we expect amazing free tiers, which is part of a strategic marketing ploy for products to get people in and hopefully get them to pay. But we expect free tiers. We expect to use all the software in the world. And sometimes we forget the fact that, like, these are still people, they're small teams, and maybe they're doing it on the side. Very few of them are just wealthy enough to not care if they don't make money. Like, that's a great position to be in, but very few of, I think, the people that are doing this stuff are in that position. And so it's just like with businesses. I mean, you can only do free or like very little income for so long, and that's why we see companies go through transitions, and it's just a reality. I think with the Next.js, or excuse me, with Vercel and SvelteKit, I think there's a lot of benefit that comes from looking at each other and knowing some of the internals of how each other works, and being able to pick and choose those and kind of change and adapt that way. I think that's really powerful. I do think you have the potential with Vercel for Vercel to have like exclusive benefits of hosting with Vercel with those types of applications. I've actually heard like Netlify has had to reverse engineer some of the features that Vercel has because they're closed for Vercel, which also makes sense. Brad, you brought up the conversation. Did you have, like, what are your thoughts on that whole idea?
Yeah, my take is generally that it's a good thing to put those project maintainers as a salaried position. They can then, dedicate themselves to moving the project forward. I think the bad thing, though, is exactly what you just said. When the next thing you know, like, the hosting company that owns the framework is like implementing specific features. Like, you want to keep those things as separate as possible. And I will say that Svelte has done a great job there, and SvelteKit, because they rely on the adapter model. And I think the adapter model is really good. You have your framework, it stays separate, and then you have adapters for each host, and then they can get as complicated as you want. And that's another opportunity for like open source collaboration.
There's this is a little off topic, but an overlap potentially to see with SvelteKit and Svelte specifically, and the React ecosystem, maybe because of being next to Next.js, is Svelte Signals, which I have gotten very mixed aggressive feedback of. Like, it's not just like React, it's very different under the hood, but it looks a lot like React and UState, etc. So I have no idea. Like, maybe that was partially influenced by like seeing the Next.js team working with React. I have no idea. Maybe not. It could just be a coincidence that it looks similar. But it is fun to see the evolution of frameworks, and also just see the overlap. Like, even if they're not within the same company, to see how they kind of change with each other. Like, they all kind of recognize this one's doing this good, this one's doing this good. We can all kind of continue to get better. And that makes it hard, because as developers, we're continuing to have to learn new methodologies about how we do stuff. But it does mean, I think, that we're continuing to get better and better from a lot of different perspectives, performance and developer experience, etc. So
yeah.
Have you, on the Astro side, have you done anything with like Astro on the server side? So by default, Astro is static. That's probably what people think of when they think of Astro. That's probably what you think of when you think of having a headless CMS. But have you done anything with like SSR server-side rendered approach to Astro?
Previews. I'm using SSR for previews. Okay. It's great for, especially with different CMSs when you want to preview a page or site that you are working on. That's why I just create, in most cases, I go with the hybrid model. So most of the thing is static, especially those things that is facing the users. But there's also the part that is just for usage from when I connect it with either WP admin or I use live previews with StateMic. So yeah, after each change, the API is kind of changing, so I can see the latest data that is just placed in the place where it should be. So this is kind of the, at least for me, where I use this server-side rendering. But yeah, I also played a bit with it, and yeah, it's really powerful. So I can really imagine that, for example, the moment when your website becomes too big, and the building would be too much of a hassle. Yeah, going server-side rendering, caching the API a bit to make sure that the source server won't collapse under the traffic, and you're good to go. Yeah. Again, caching. Caching is the most important thing. I mean, no, sorry, it's the second most important thing. The most important thing, always remember to clear the cache. It solves most of the problems.
I remember having lots of those discussions at work at FedEx. I would actually, Brad, for us, for the future, I would love to do a deep dive on caching, especially because I get general ideas. I feel like there's a lot of specifics I'm missing with caching. So that could be something we could cover in the future, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I would have to do some research for an episode like that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, awesome, there are so many methods to cache things right now. It's really getting complicated. I mean, I remember when we just saved the file and that's it.
Yeah. It seems like any individual topic that you dive into is always much more complicated than you think it is. Which makes sense. Yeah. There's a question really quick for you about the idea of components, and I think you mentioned this earlier, that it exists in PHP and maybe specifically Laravel. Like, there are concepts of components similar to what we think of with React and Svelte, etc.
I mean, in most cases, it's just called includes, because you just include a part of another file. You can pass some specific data inside of it. So yeah. And I also remember that even Blade introduced at some point a syntax that looks just like components. So as we think from the perspective of React. So it always was here. And this is also a very interesting thing, that the moment when I saw that people are excited, whoa, there are components, I was like, so. We kind of have something like this. Why?
Yeah.
But I'll echo a sentiment here from Dave Rupert is, how come we don't have native HTML components yet? How come we don't have HTML partials yet? Right? I mean, could you imagine just doing like a source tag or a link like right in your HTML that just pulls in another hunk of HTML, and we didn't have to invent all these front end frameworks to componentize things or templating languages? It's kind of wild where, you've got a language based on distributed files, and it's not going to give you the ability to pull in bits of another one.
It would be really amazing to have this. And to be honest, I think that since we kind of get rid of one of the biggest breaks in the whole internet, I mean, the Internet Explorer, And I think that right now standardizing some things will be much easier, and maybe sooner than later we will have a chance to see it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, JavaScript had its heyday in ES6. CSS is having its heyday right now. New features left and right. I think next up we're going to see HTML. We're already starting to get a wave of new elements. Think about dialogue and popover that are starting to release. You know, maybe they keep pushing the envelope and we get some new stuff there.
Yeah, it would be, to be honest, it would be amazing.
Yeah,
it would be much simpler.
Yeah.
A web development world that's much simpler. What?
Hey, as your primitives grow, your frameworks can get less complex. I think that's the sentiment I think that I really hope comes true.
Yep.
I kind of believe in a moment when because this is kind of the reason why frameworks or some tools are created, just to die at some point. I mean, let's look at CSS. More and more things are getting available in pure CSS.
Yeah.
It took many years, but we have, let's be honest, we have most of it right now. There are only few options that I think that aren't possible with pure CSS right now. What we saw, this .env library for Node, it was required, and now it will die because it won't be needed anymore. And maybe at some point we will see that many of those front-end frameworks also won't be required, or they will be just doing a part of things that they are doing now, because HTML will be able to do it on its own. I mean, it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
There's we probably won't dive into this because we are maybe ready to move into picks and plugs in a second, but one of the comments in the chat is about why does client side exist if you can do all these things on the server? And that's the way we've done things for a long time. You look at Ruby on Rails, you look at PHP Laravel, you look at a lot of WordPress, you look at Node and using it with the templating language like EJS or something like that. That is the idea, is you can do a lot of stuff on the server. And we got away from that with CSR, client-side rendering, with React, Angular, etc., going even back to like Ember. And there's lots of benefits that came with that, and the way we could do responsiveness and not having to do full page refreshes, and page-to-page loads were faster because we had all the JavaScript and stuff already there. So there's benefits. And then I think we've just gone through the circle of like realizing the trade-offs of either side. And the cool thing about where we are now is I think more and more, and I think Next.js for me was the big one that really solidified this, was the ability to mix and choose how we render stuff with some additional use of developer experience, benefit of developer experience on top of it. So yes, I think server side absolutely has its place. Very powerful. We're seeing it become more and more encouraged and prevalent the recent months or year. But also there's some benefit to statically generating pages, and there's some benefit to having JavaScript being able to run on the browser to add functionality as well.
Yeah, I mean, the circle about static site generators, and it's quite funny because I remember that at first, we just wrote HTML in a notepad. We were the static site generators, right? Then WordPress and other CMSs like Drupal, like Joomla, and everything was dynamic. And at some point, hey, let's go modern, let's go static again. And it's like, what? What is happening?
Yep. It is really funny when you kind of go back through the history of how the web has evolved. But like I said, I think it's continued to get better and better in those individual regards. Are we ready to move into picks and plugs? So for people that are listening, pick is just anything that we've used or watched or read recently that we enjoy, and then anything that we want to plug ourselves. Either one of you want to go first?
I will start with the pick. I just bought myself a Lego, this A-shaped house. It's really amazing. I mean, this is the cool thing when some people say that Legos are for children. No, they are not. You will never grow from it. I mean, also the cool part is now I have a kid, so I have an extra excuse. Hey, I'm buying it for my kid, of course. Maybe I will help him a bit, just a bit, but not so much. Yeah, but this A-shaped house, it's really amazing, and it's quite funny because my parents have a, let's call it a country house that looks almost exactly like this, because they were quite popular back then during communism in Poland, because this was one of the pre-made houses you could get, and yeah, it looks almost exactly the same. So it's twice as funny, and yeah, it's like a pure fun. It has so many details. So yeah, it just brings me joy. So
Are you done with it yet? Can you show it?
I mean, it's only partially right now because I still haven't finished.
Oh, it's bigger than I thought it would be. Yeah, I just Googled it, and it's
because yeah, it will be like this.
Yeah,
and there will be also separated tree and something else. So it will be quite a construction. Like I said, when I saw it for the first time, when they announced it, I was like, oh, I have to buy it. I have to buy it. Then I saw it was like about 1,000 zlotys there. So let's divide it by 4, so 250 euros. Yeah, it's a toy, but I thought, yeah, I will buy it. But in the end, it turned out a bit cheaper after a few months. So perfect way to spend my time after work.
totally. Yeah, we, my family just took a vacation, and we went to the Lego store on the vacation. And I said, okay, everybody gets to pick something, and we're all leaving with Lego. And so myself, my wife, and my 2 kids all brought something home, and we had a giant Lego party where we just like cleared off the kitchen table and built Legos all afternoon as like a relaxation day after the vacation. It was great.
Yeah.
Do you have a plug as well?
So I will start because yeah, we at Kinsta we just released something, and I was a part of it, and I'm really proud of it. We just released static site hosting. So, and this is again quite funny, right? Because 21st century, and the company announced, hey, we have static site hosting. But yeah, we released it. Right now it's only for node-based static site generators. But yeah, it works. It's quick.
Cool.
Your static websites will be fast, secure, and so on and so on. So yeah, I highly recommend it to give it a try, especially that there is a really nice free tier. So James, you will probably like it. You, as you mentioned, you like those free tiers, right? So
James and all of the other cheap developers like me.
and like me, I'm also happy with this because yeah, free tier is always amazing.
Yeah. Does Kinsta also have like full Node backend hosting as well? Was that something that you released
at this point we have at this point we have kind of everything, because we started as a WordPress hosting company. About a year ago, we added application and database hosting, which are quite self-explanatory. So you can use any Docker image that you want. We added quite a few features during the year. For example, the persistent storage. At first, we only had build packs, but then we have also Nix packs. So it kind of gives you a wider range of things you can use. And right now, we also added the static site hosting. And to be honest, this is something I'm really proud of because it really enables many ways to kind of partner with other companies, and I really can't wait how it will develop with everything.
More you can do.
Yeah, let's be honest. Netlify and Vercel also started as static site hosting, and this is also kind of funny because I remember the first time when I learned that there are companies that are hosting static sites. Why? And why? Right? Because being from this PHP background, it was like, but why would you do this?
And look how far.
So yeah, the world is really changing in that.
Yep.
Well, and I always said, if you can build a business, hosting a static site, like I'm just as amazed that like LaunchDarkly built a business based on a Boolean value. You know what I mean? Like,
that is true. That is true. Yeah, because let's be honest, they're Boolean as a service.
That's right.
Yeah, and another thing I can tell that I also have my nice YouTube channel called the Code and Coffee Show. So it's also very interesting. We talk about coffee and about code. So again, I go with the very self-explanatory things.
Fred, do you have picks and plug, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Sweet. I have been watching a TV show called SWAT, which I kind of avoided. I've seen it advertised on Netflix a decent amount. I kind of avoided it because it looked like just the cliche, like maybe over the top, like police type show. And I started watching it, and I've really enjoyed it, like a lot more than I expected it to. So it's been a ton of fun. Jess watches it with me. She's not quite as into it, but she at least watches it with me. So that's been a fun watch. I think it's 6 seasons, and I just started season 4, so I've got a little bit more to go. They just got to a season where they're talking about COVID, and that always gets a little weird with TV shows that had to like film during COVID and stuff, because they try to incorporate it into the show, and it gets really interesting. So anyway, SWAT on Netflix, been pretty good for me. And I will plug my Astro course. We talked about Astro. My course is updated, created for Astro 3.0, which is the latest major version, and dives deep into both the statically generated content aspect of Astro and the server-side rendering aspect. Brad actually built the demo for that, which was super helpful, and incorporated authentication and comments and just doing a lot of the things that I think people wouldn't expect you to be able to do with Astro, which I think is really neat. So you can find that at astrocourse.dev.
And that was my first Astro experience, and it was wonderful. Like,
love it.
Almost zero learning curve. Very, very straightforward to do the things we needed to do. It was great.
Exactly.
Let's see. For me, my pick is going to be this app I've been using for running. I'm trying to get into running more. I even joined like a little challenge with some coworkers and stuff just to get some miles in. But I've been using the Nike Run Club app, and I like it because it has guided runs. Like, you put in your headphones and somebody talks to you as you run, like, hey, we're going to go fast here. We're going to go slow here. Or, this is an interval run, so it's going to start here and end here and all this stuff. And it's helped me think about running as more of like a progression as a sport, instead of just like running the same pace for the same distance, twice a week or something. So taking it more seriously, it's been a lot of fun. And if you get on there, find me and follow me, or, whatever, join my club or whatnot, and we can all run together.
I remember that at some point, Runtastic had this one cool feature that, apart from, of course, this trainer, run faster, run slower, there was also an adventure mode when you were like a part of it. Something is happening. You are like in the middle of the action movie, and they are gaining on you. Run now. It was really amazing.
Oh yeah, I think I've even heard of another app that's like you're running away from zombies or something.
Oh, yeah,
so they make like a scene for you to go through. That's cool. And then let's see, my plug. I actually redid my newsletter, like Twitter's review service shut down, and so the whole newsletter was like gone. So I transferred my contacts and stuck them into loops.so, a new service that was suggested to me by Braden Coyer. Is that his last name? Braden? I think so.
Yeah.
And Loops was super easy to set up. And so you can sign up for my newsletter. I promise I will barely send you anything. It's mostly just to collect emails if I ever do build something big in the future. So go check out loops.so. It was great to integrate with.
Cool. It does look amazing. I mean, because I had the same problem, I had to migrate to Substack. I mean, I'm happy because it works. But
tried Substack. I was like Substack and Loops, and I chose Loops. So
nice.
They're really good for both transactional email and like campaigns and flows. So you can make audience segments, and super easy to integrate with really their nice API. Too. So yeah,
API
because
integration.
Substack
nice.
doesn't. Yeah, and Substack doesn't have any. So.
Yeah,
I mean, this was a surprise for me. I was looking for how to integrate Substack with, Substack API, and the answer is we don't have an API.
There is,
surprising.
Good to know. Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you for joining us, for talking about one of my favorite topics in Astro, at least getting to partly Astro, and we've had WordPress make an appearance on a lot of episodes, especially with Amy. She'll be upset that she missed this one because she's big background in WordPress as well. But it's cool to talk about the evolution of web development, the evolution of something like WordPress, the integration of that with other modern tooling like Astro, and it's just a fun web development space that we live in. So if you are listening to the podcast and you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a rating and review in your podcatcher of choice so that we can continue to do episodes and have on amazing guests in the future. But thank you to you for being here and everyone for listening. In the meantime, that's all we got. Zion said he's waiting for Amy stream. That was
like her Twitch channel or something.
Oh, for her to actually stream. She must have done it recently because I went into the dashboard and it was on her page. So anyway, all right, I am going to call it on the stream too because we've got a meeting at Jess and I together to talk about that Conference Texas, which everyone should go to with Clark. So I'm going to run. Thanks everyone for checking in and watching. Brad, Maciek, thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you, man. Great talk.
And you too. It was really amazing. And